meeting is to talk about fiscal year 2022 budget.
All right. So, things actually look pretty good with budget this year. This is, so obviously today is the clerk's recommendation, and we feel like this is kind of a working document still. So we have a lot to talk about. The good news, I think, Christy has mixed feelings about the amount of property taxes that we're not taking this year. So things should look good in property taxes. It's just we might sell ourselves short when we start looking at the highest of 3 years and years to come. We might be a little short, but Christy can talk more about that. So I've asked Christy to go through and talk about a couple of highlights. One of my biggest thing was I asked Christy and Katie to do no grade changes. The positions that we added, as we had talked about in our previous budget meetings. But I wanted to see on this sheet, on the recommendation, what the 3.5% COLA would look like for pay increases. So I instructed them no grade changes across the board. So that's where this is, and that's what I recommended. So Christy has some other highlights that she wants to talk about, and of course she'll go through some of the revenues and expenditures that we are looking at for this next year.
All right.
Okay, do you want to talk funding first?
Yes.
Okay. So, this recommendation has, with House Bill 389, we had to change how we did property taxes. The county and Road and Bridge used to be combined. That's no longer the case. So, the county, we used only the highest of 3 years, plus 3%, and that left $282,000 on the table. So if you look at, you can kind of follow along with me. If you look at this sheet.
That one?
Yep.
Yep.
No, this one.
Smaller print
Got all the funds on
Yep.
that one that Ernie has.
Next one down.
Next one down. Okay, got
This
it.
is our, this is what we call the funding sources.
Okay.
So if you look at this, you'll see that the total property tax column, I did not change that to 21, that should be FY 21, sorry. We're using $25,589,132 in property taxes. The number right below the total, that's 25,871, that's how much the highest of 3 years plus 3% would be. So when you subtract what we could take versus, I did a really good job. No, that's right. You subtract the 25,871 by the 25,500, that leaves the 282 on the table for property taxes. So that's how much short we will be from using the highest of 3 years plus 3% for the county. Then if you go to Road and Bridge, we are taking the highest of 3 years plus 3% plus a conservative new construction amount. So I don't have final rolls yet, but Anita had me take new construction, and I took, it came in at like 93 million prior to BOE. I took it down to 74 million. So it's still a huge increase, but so that's what the Road and Bridge taxes is based on. Same thing with mosquito. That's based on highest of 3 years, 3% and new construction. Ambulance is the only exception. We took all of that plus the 1% of foregone that we're allowed to do, to build into the base. And that was simply just to get them funded. Okay. If you look on the back side of that sheet, that shows you where we're at so far with levies. Again, I don't have final values, so I used current year values, which will be higher for this year. So these numbers are very conservative. The levy will not, it should be less than this. The top part shows what the levy would have, or what the levy was with the governor's money. So that's gonna be a lower levy rate to compare, but that's what our taxpayers paid based on. The amount below that is without. So if you wanted to compare apples to apples, that's what we wanna look at. And then the projected levy is to the right there, and, that's $529.28 per taxable 100,000. So if we're comparing without the governor's money to, what I think the levy's gonna be, it's still a savings of $13.30 per taxable 100,000. Again, this is really rough. Anita's hoping to get me final values today. So, Thursday's budget meeting, I'll hopefully be able to have better numbers for you, so we'll know what we're doing. I did the levy with the governor's, money, just so that you could see taxpayers paid $454. We're projecting $529. I didn't do the math on that.
14.5% increase.
Yeah, it's like $70,
Yeah.
the taxable 100,000. And that's what you're going to take the heat on for the property taxes, but regardless, even if you didn't take all this money, it's gonna be an increase, just because of the governor's money.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, it's 14.13% increase.
so that is,
Mhm.
those are the property taxes. If you, on that column for the other revenues, if you look at this sheet, this is my other revenue projections, this is my Rev S.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the numbers I'm projecting based on prior years. I was a little less conservative than prior years, but I'm still very comfortable that I didn't take the numbers up too much. So, if you're interested in that, you can look at those numbers. And then the last piece of the funding is the reserves that we're gonna use, and that's this sheet. So, you can look at, for example, current expense. We're gonna use $2 million in reserves. If you look at this sheet, it shows we have excess reserves of 5.6. So if we use 2 of that, that's still gonna leave us 3.6 in the general fund, and I have that for all of these. On the back side of this sheet is the trusts. Part of the reason Jason and I talked about the reserves and the amount that we were gonna use, we were conservative in what we used. They're still leaving reserves on the table simply because next year, FY '23, we will have an extra pay period.
Let's not do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Everybody made
promise.
sure?
In
Everybody good?
'23, yeah.
Everyone's counted multiple times.
Yes.
Did we get the calendar out by hand and do the Mississippi
Yes.
Encore? Okay, good. Just
Yes.
I will never live that down, and I hate that I made that
Pass along
much
to
of a
everybody
mistake.
do their own
So-
independent.
Hey,
We've worked through it, haven't we?
Yeah.
we'll get through it. No big
Just
deal.
hate making a mistake like that, but at least it was to the benefit of the county. So we left money on the table for that extra pay period, plus the way the market is going, everything's going up. At some point, things have to level off. So it would be nice to have a little bit of extra money as a just in case for when that happens, so that we can still be sensitive to the taxpayers when that time comes. So that is the funding side. So we've got a little bit of property taxes to play with. Pending.
Let's talk about the couple of the funds that we're using a little bit more in reserves that
Okay.
are a little bit tighter. But most of those are leaving a substantial number in reserves. But there are two that I had Christie change one of them just this morning even, but let's talk about those.
We'll just run through, there's not very many of these that we're looking at. So we already talked about current expense. Justice Fund, there's 2.3 million in excess reserves. We're gonna use 650. Pretty comfortable with that. That still gives us some money if we ever do an expansion or something like that. We've got some money sitting there. District Court has 780,000 in excess reserves. We're using 146. Appraisal, and I'm not following along, I'm following along.
Yep.
Okay. Appraisal has 180,000 in reserves. We're using 50, that's for the industrials outsourcing it. So that was pretty justified, and that still leaves in a pretty good amount. Fair Exhibit, they have 159,000 in reserves. We are using about half of that. So that is an area that we could use more tax dollars if you chose. Or this is one that's a little more aggressive than the others.
When we get to that, we'll look at what we're doing in the fair.
Right.
Historical Society, that one's actually in the hole, projected to be in the hole for reserves. So that's why it's a negative. Indigent, we have $1.3 million in excess reserves, and I'm using about half of that. The rationale for that is we shouldn't need as much funding in the future, so the expenditure should be going down, so that's why we were a little more aggressive there.
If you burn off some of those reserves, the arguments that were made in the legislature with 389 and some of that goes away.
Right,
Because they said that we needed to burn some reserves, and we burned reserves.
right, yeah.
But, so don't yell at us this year, which they will. And
Noxious weed has 341 in excess, and we're using 80. Tort is another one that we were a little more aggressive in. They have 33,000 in excess reserves. I'm using 15. That's just simply to get it down. But that is a fund that continues to go up a little bit every year.
Yeah.
It's just the tort fund, so. Landfill, we've got 3.7. Again, this one's a little aggressive with 2.3, but it's what they need for the expansion, and then hopefully next year,
Yeah.
the next year, they won't need as much, and we can start building again.
Well, our garbage won't build up as fast.
Junior
Sounds like it.
college is, that one's been building because claims didn't come in. So we have 78,000 in excess reserve. We're using 47. The claims just aren't there right now, so that was a little aggressive. And the funds we're talking about now are, if we don't use the reserves, then, like in junior college, we would take more liquor money and give to junior college and less to the general fund. So, Pilt, we've got plenty of money in Pilt, 939,000, but again, there's always the threat that it could go away. We're using 101 of that, but within Pilt, most of what we budgeted was potentially ARPA funds. So, we may not need all of this, so we may not dip into that. Pilt would be a good option for us if we decide to keep doing the capital improvements. So that's kind of the other reason we left that in there. 911, we'll talk about on Thursday a little bit more, but we're in the negative on those reserves, but again, it's fee-based. So when we talk about that budget, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Snowmobile, we're using 15,000 of the 110 in reserves. That money's always been held for a truck when they gave me to buy it, but because they wanted to do some raises in that, I think we're only getting at 15 in revenues. Revenues have gone down this year, so.
They weren't licensing.
Yeah.
So, maybe if they start, we'll be okay, but we'll see. Juvenile facility, they have a resolution that they're gonna pass that they wanna only hold 33% of reserves plus the, CARES money. So, they've got $1.5 million in reserves, so we'll start, last year we used some of that down, we're gonna continue to use that down, but we're gonna use it down slowly so that you don't have the big influx of a budget drop drastically and then a budget increase. So if you do it slowly, then it's less of an effect.
What are you gonna
if that
project
makes
to burn
sense.
then?
Hmm?
Because it shows excess of 1.5 million, so what are you gonna burn this year?
We're gonna use 253. So if we can continue to use that down, over the next few years, we'll probably have about 4 years of it, but that took your contribution from 800,000 down to 600,000 within the operations fund. And then trusts, that one is mostly cash forward anyways. So, you can look at that closer if you'd like. Those are on the back side. The big bulk of that is health insurance. Health insurance, because we have, and actually we do need to talk about that one. We have about 5.6 in reserves, so we're gonna use 1.5 of that this year, on health insurance, and that actually helps out all of our departments. It took our per employee contribution from 15,000 down to 12. So that helped us out within these property tax dollars too. So we also saw an increase of revenue of about 300,000 because we've been charging grants for health insurance, but because it's not been a for sure on some of the grants, I haven't projected that in as revenue. We did this year. We've got the indigent, or not indigent, public defense, the 2 grants there that we're charging, and wood court, those are the big ones, that make up the bulk of that. So, then we get to road and bridge. Road and bridge has 3.5 in excess reserves. We're using the 890, which was that extra payment that they received, through the highway users. Ambulance, they have 452. This one is a little bit tight also, but we're gonna use 270 in reserves, but that's their capital request. And we're using everything we can in property taxes, so to give them what they want, that's what we had to do. Mosquito, they have 159,000. We've been slowly using that down. I have 48,000 that we're gonna use in that, but that also leaves $20,000. If you look on your funding sheet, there's 20,000 to the very right. Kyle wants to come in and talk to you guys about the change in the hierarchy for noxious and mosquito, so that was why I left this 20,000 on here. We'll end up adjusting either property taxes or fund balance to get rid of that 20,000, depending on what we decide. He's gonna come in at 1:30 today to talk about that.
That's good.
It's part of the budget meeting. We just figured we needed to get that. That wasn't any change we made, and it was something that he wanted to pitch to you guys. We did not feel comfortable making any recommendations because that's gonna be your call. So we have him coming in to just talk about what he wants to do, and then you guys can take that information and present it.
Okay.
I figured he would be better to present it than the clerk.
Okay.
So, that's the funding side. Any questions? That's a lot.
ARPA funds. Have you figured that anywhere in any of this?
The only thing we did was put the projects in PILT. So if we felt it was a little bit safer to put that in PILT, and then if by chance ARPA funds came through for these projects, we'll pay them out of the grant, and then it will just leave these funds available. That way money isn't sitting in a county department. If you look in your grants line, we have 12.6 budgeted for grants. 7.5 of that is the ARPA funds.
So, just to make sure that we're clear on that, that was budgeted, so if there is a project that comes up and we
Yes.
figure it out,
There's
that we
seven-
decide to take $7.5 million and go do projects and whatever, we're budgeted for the year and we're good to
Yeah.
execute.
What we'll need to do though, and we're gonna have this meeting, I think, in the next couple of weeks, how we do our grants is, we have a 12.6 threshold. So as grants come up, we set the budgets for them, as long as we're within this 12.6 and within, like for, the ARPA fund that we have, I can't remember what the number is, that's the 7.5.
Yep.
So we'll have that dollar amount for them, we'll have to allocate what we want to spend the money on. It's not, hey, there's 7.5, just go spend it.
No,
We have to put
it's,
it
you
by
have
line
to,
item.
you have allocated it.
Yes.
It has to be appropriated.
Yes,
thought we had 8.5 in ARPA funds.
We've used,
that's what I meant, 8.5.
whatever.
No, we haven't used anything yet.
Okay.
So there's 8.5 in ARPA funds, and then the 4.1 is everything else. And when you guys sign off on award letters for grants, that's what gives us the budget, and so that's how you do approve it through the grant award, so, but it's all one.
I was watching another thing on, ARPA stuff. You have states that are piling up already that are starting to file what they want to do with additional funds because they know that most of your small municipalities, counties and stuff across the country are probably not going to be able to execute in a timely manner. And if they can't, funds have to be returned. There's talking about some deadline changes and some other stuff already in the
Extensions?
in the federal government right now of how to do stuff. They are up to shenanigans. So we just want to make sure that if, as soon as we have a project that we know or something that comes in, that we can execute it as fast as possible, because I'm pretty sure what they're going to do is they're probably going to adjust their timeline of when you have to have it off, what you're spending it on.
Allocated.
They're still changing rules. And there's other states like California and others, they've already started, they have project packages ready to go. The second the funds become available, they just go and spend it.
So one of the things that I read, and then on a webinar that I was on, a week ago or so, hopefully there's going to be some better verbiage.
Yeah.
The first week of August, which is when the clerk's conference is.
Yeah.
And I'm having Christy go to that because there are, at that conference, there are there's basically a full day of ARPA.
The good thing is I've been watching what's being spent. You know, they've already started having no jails, unfortunately, but there's all sorts of other stuff money's being spent on, and so it's kind of an interesting what's there. But that's the problem is now the Congress is now going in, and they're probably going to have, you know, a tighter or change things, or just. I think what they're going to do is they're probably going to shorten our timeline to have projects identified. Because what's happening is you're getting other states that want more money, and they know that if they shorten the timeline on us, we can't execute them. And
Well, we have to submit a plan by August 31st. So Jason and I had talked about what we'll do is we'll go to the clerk's conference. When we get back from that, we'll set up a work session to discuss the projects that we know we have. List all of those out and then do a work session to see how you guys want to set that up so that we can submit the plan by August 31st. So
when is the next ARPA payment supposed to come in?
next May.
Next May?
It comes in, so we got the first one in May, 1 year later, no, June. 1 year later, we get the other payment. So it's
So-
the end of May, 1st of June.
Do we budget then to
Anticipate.
anticipate the expenditure?
What we can do is, when those funds come in, if we're gonna have all $17 million that we can spend, we can do we can open the budget for unanticipated for that 8.5 in May or June. Otherwise, we can anticipate spending it in
'Cause
FY '20.
What I would really like is, like I said, how the other big states and everything else, you have a project packet that's ready to go. And hey, we know that this is gonna be a project that we're looking at that that this will fit, and it's waiting to fund. And so then what happens is, we've already done all the back work on it, and if something comes in that can be expensed, as soon as the funds are made available, you go. Because by the time you go through bid and all this other stuff, looking at their timelines to follow state guidelines and bidding and all this other stuff, it's gonna be interesting. I mean,
So you don't want to put the additional 8.5 in that grant line.
If you want us to, we can. It's gonna inflate your bottom line. So right now, we're at just right under 83 million. If we add another
it's gonna make the
8.5,
budget look bigger.
it's gonna make it look bigger.
Yeah,
So
that's easily explainable.
it is, to those that listen to
To
explanation.
people that listen.
So we'll have the same result if we open for unanticipated.
Right.
It's totally your call. We just chose to put what we have already.
Okay.
If you want, we can add the other 8.5 in there. It's your preference. It's a wash, it's revenue and expenditures, it's gonna equal. So, that can be, when we get to our grant section, we can talk about that, or if you guys tell me to do it now, we can do it.
Well, I think we still have enough fluid activity coming out of Congress. I mean, I see why we would do it now, because we know that, okay, under this law, the way it's passed, put it in. Do we put PILT anticipated in the budget every year? We do, but it's only it's a concurrent resolution that has to happen every 2 years. If they don't pass it every 2 years, then we don't get it.
Mhm.
So, I would say, we're gonna have people that are gonna throw rocks raising the budget, but at the same time, they did it the first time when we had to include grants in there. I mean, if we're gonna say that this is what we're gonna do, I think it's more transparent to just say, hey, this law has already come into effect, we're anticipating this coming in.
Well, and you know how much we're getting. We're getting 17 million total.
So go ahead and just
So-
put it in the budget and say, hey, if it doesn't come in, hey, we're $8.5 million under budget, man. And if we don't spend it, you're $8.5 million under budget.
So.
I just say put it in there.
Okay,
I-
we'll do
And-
that.
I kind of like that.
Because then it's easier too to say,
Yeah.
hey, we're anticipating this is the money that's coming in, this is what we're looking at, it's not here until July, and that's why it's very, we have to be very careful. It's in our allocation and appropriation. This doesn't mean that there's $17 million every day one October 1st, we're gonna go spend money.
Right.
No.
Well, on August 31, we'll have to have that plan
Yeah.
put together. I don't know.
So do they
if
want
we
the
can-
plan for just the first 7.5, or do they want the plan for?
I think they
No,
want
it's just the
full plan.
first,
Is
it's
it
just the
first
first
half?
7.5 because that's all we've received.
Okay.
And so, and
What level of plan does it need to be?
it needs to be a little bit specific. And so if it's, I don't know, and this was one of the questions that was asked, is it a plan to wait for the second payment before you plan? No, it's not.
So do they want it
Jason's been
by,
watching
do they
all
want it
these.
by
He's the
project
expert.
specific, or do they want it by category?
Say that again.
Project specific or category?
They want specific projects.
Okay.
So we're gonna pay 10 miles out on BFE.
Well, you can't pave roads.
Yeah.
But that's.
Welcome to the
That's a
So-
good example.
So one of the things, this is kind of what spawned the conversation when people started saying, how specific do you want it? Is it gonna be required? And, the gal that was on with clerks from NACO was saying, they're gonna want it to be pretty specific.
Yeah.
So then Alan got on there, Dornfest, and said, we should have some sort of specific verbiage for you to use when you come home from the clerk's conference on how to do that. And then we'll come home, we'll have a work session, you can figure out what exactly you want it to say, and Christie can submit that plan using the verbiage that we get up there.
And we'll try and have it,
Hopefully.
Yeah.
like the clerk's conference is the week of the 9th or something like that, so we'll have
Mhm.
it that next week. And then that would actually give us 2 weeks to work on it in case we need it, before the 31st to submit it. So it won't be like we got one day to think about it ahead of time. So, and hopefully we'll have some good information.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Okay, so that's the revenue side. If any other questions pop up, holler. So as far as the expenditure side, we'll go through all of the pages and hit more precise highlights of what we changed. But like Jason said, there were no grade changes. We only added 4 new positions: the accountant, the prosecutor, the sheriff deputy, and the evidence tech. And then moving from part-time to full-time, we did the HR management assistant, the veterans admin assistant, and the custodian. Which, the custodian, we might be able to hire now, if you guys want to do that. So that's something to think about. I think the position is still vacant. If it is, there's plenty of funding, and we could just make it effective now, assuming you want the full-time custodian. So, something to think about once we set budget. If he hasn't hired anybody, he could repost, and, if we have this done by Monday next week, and it's still vacant, then potentially you could say yes or no. It's your call. So those are the new positions. Current, in FY '21, the event center was able to add the assistant operations manager, 2 facilities assistants, a receptionist, and then juvenile probation traded the 1 clinical director position to a PO and a coordinator. And you guys had already approved that. We talked about health insurance, and last year we projected to use $800,000 in reserves. Again, this year we're using $1.5 million. The only thing we do not have in this budget that we were not comfortable, or Jason wasn't comfortable making a decision on, or we didn't have the information for, was City Works maintenance. Kyle's the only one that budgeted for that, so we need to add the maintenance for IT, grounds, and event center. So we need those numbers. Kyle was gonna get me his numbers so that I knew what the difference was, so that we could throw those in here.
Are they doing that proportionately? Is that what Kyle is doing, or are we
I have
just splitting it?
no idea. Once we have Kyle's numbers, we can, yes.
Okay. 'Cause I was
'Cause I'm
thinking
not sure.
I was just thinking that we were dividing it equally amongst all of the
Okay.
things, so let's see what.
And I'm not, yeah, so hopefully Kyle will have that. I called him about 7:30 this morning. He was gonna get that to me, but he wasn't able to. I mean, he couldn't stop everything just for that. So we still need to add that in here. Huh?
Why not?
He's selfish.
I guess I should have told him that. What did you want on your budget? The commission wants that number. We did add 33,000 to planning and zoning for the city works. How did we do that?
Because he's not gonna have it next year, I don't believe. I think how come in the following year?
Okay, so we can take that out when we get to it then.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that is correct.
I had the.
Because he was gonna renew his existing thing for next year,
Okay,
and then he would come in the following year.
do we wanna leave it in there since I have it and it's funded? And then if he can do it sooner, he can, and if not, we roll it? We can talk about that when we get to it.
We've got room in
Okay.
it.
So that's City Works. One thing we talked about, but we did not put in here was potentially putting in leave payouts for all the departments so that when they had transition, they were able to replace them. So we were more worried about making sure we could fund the COLA and the needs before we did that dollar amount, but now with a little bit of money left on the table, we could do that. But again, that was
Let's
something.
go through it. I think that that's still part of the conversation that we have about wages and the big picture on it. Also talk about, benefits package. And then something that has come up lately is also talking about military leave,
Yes.
that we need to look at
So if
those
we,
packages.
if we put in a leave amount in all the departments, that would help take care of those issues. So, but that will also, that'll need addressed. So those were the only two things that I think we didn't address that we had talked about. So, any questions so far? Okay. So our plan was just to go through page by page. We can talk about, I'll give you the highlights of what we changed. And then, we discussed with most all departments, any changes we made. If we didn't, I'll let you know who those were, that we didn't. So on the clerk's budget, again, we added the, accountant, and then, we split up Mandy Williams, 60% clerk, 40% treasurer's office. So those are the only A changes. We took out any grade adjustments. And then, when you get down to software support, we took out our Tyler, support, admin support, and put that into IT's budget. Just to be consistent.
And actually, where are we with Tyler?
We go live with finance October 1st. And then, January 1, we go live with, HR payroll. And then there's a ESS module, which is the employee self-serve. That one is set to go live April 1st. We did make an exception on ESS, and, Ryan is gonna be able to do applications online, through ESS October 1st. But he is totally on his own. We don't have any support to assist him with that. So he's having to put the applications in the system, and it's all what he can do, just simply because we're not gonna have the staff to be able to assist with that.
Question on the software support, you said to be consistent. To me, that seems not consistent. If we're charging for city works to the different departments,
This one is a countywide, because our accounting system is countywide, so that's why it's in IT. Our Nova Time is countywide, so it's in IT. So anything that is department specific, then we try to charge the departments, but ours is all,
yeah, okay, that
So,
that
that's
makes
fine.
sense, thank you.
and then other than that, this is all the same stuff as the department request until you get back to our Tyler. When we put in our department request, I wasn't sure how much the continued implementation was gonna cost, so I threw in 400,000. We got that down to a more precise number, which we think will be about 200,000. We're probably gonna have this over the next couple of years, just simply because we're not gonna be fully implemented next year. It's gonna take possibly another year. Next year, we're gonna, like I said, ESS, well, HR payroll will be January 1, ESS will be April 1. We've got the financial module that will be after I get financials done next year, because I gotta use our legacy system for that. We've got the capital assets that we may not go live until after October 1. So we have a handful of different modules that won't be live until after. Once we go live with all of that, then, and get departments on board, then we may need to have a little bit more implementation and some more training so that we can get departments the ability to remote in or to log in and pay their own bills. So once we decentralize, there's gonna be more costs. But I think departments are gonna be excited. They shouldn't have, I was talking to Kyle, he shouldn't have to do QuickBooks on his own, because they'll have access to the system. In fact, they'll be paying bills in the system. So, but that's gonna be a slow pace, because we wanna make sure it's successful and not, so.
Thank you.
Any questions on the clerk? Assessor, the only thing we really did was, take out the part-time positions. We left the splits per the assessor's request. We did adjust down computer supplies, and, that's all I did on their budget. And the computer supplies was just based on IPs. We fine-tuned that number as opposed to what they wanted.
And that was based on the information Adam gave us for his recycling.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what we did across the board. And over the last couple of weeks, Adam has come in, and from the sheet that he originally gave us, he's added to some departments and taken away from some departments. And we've just gone across the board, whatever he recommended, that's what we did.
Wonderful. I'm
Pretty
excited.
nice to have
I know.
cooperation, isn't it?
Yeah, it
So
was
excited.
pretty- It actually was pretty nice to
Yeah,
just,
and so some budgets went up with that and some went down.
Right, but if that's on Adam's, I'm good with that.
But we have a plan.
yeah,
and
but that's just,
I have the spreadsheet, and they have all the emails back and forth that show everything, he said, everywhere.
but, yeah, everything, not pretty much, everything that we have in there is based on
Yeah.
Adam's
And I believe you
recommendation.
guys have that spreadsheet, right, of the computers, okay.
But probably not
Not most of
the
it.
updated one,
Right.
the very, so we'll have to get that from Adam for you.
Yeah.
Or you can get it from him, since you talk to him every day too.
Any-
Honestly, I'd like it in our packet.
Okay, we'll get you the most up-to-date.
Then it's all just all together for
Yep.
me.
And then you can put it with the clerk's recommendations, so you know why those numbers are what they are.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions on assessor?
No.
Okay.
Good.
Treasurer, we got rid of the part-time position and put Mandy in here at 40%. And then, again, we added computers, and that was the only adjustment to her budget, other than the laser printers she's gonna buy this year, or the check scanner she's gonna buy this year. I need to follow up with her, make sure she got that done.
I don't know if any of you have talked with Jen about having Mandy in there, having that part-time person. But it was, well, and this year, I put her in there pretty much full-time, because that's what it will be. During her busy time, Mandy will be in there full-time. During elections, she'll be over there working elections full-time. And I think it's gonna be a really efficient system. And Jen has loved it, this year, so.
Well, and she hasn't, and trying to get part-time help.
Yeah, we know how that's
Impossible right
been.
now.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
I think that part-time position in Jen's office has been open for 2.5 years.
Mandy's proved her value.
Yeah.
That's, I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yep.
So,
Take care of our employees.
Yep, she's a good one,
So that was pretty easy
even if
budget.
she is a cripple right now. Broken leg. She's
Yeah.
a little bit slower than she has been. She is pretty fast on that scooter now. Yeah, that's true.
On the 24,000 for Master's Touch, did we make a decision, do we need to send that whole Master's Touch thing out to
It
bid?
probably should be just a quote. We need to work on that, because where they do multiple offices, it could look as a chain. And if we're breaking it apart by office,
Okay.
I don't know if it's, I think that where they do so much for the county, we should just send out a quote for, this is the services we need, we do this for the treasurer, this for, and we can basically just take the bill that we've been billed the last couple of years, and the services that we've provided, we know we're gonna do it again, and just send it out and see what it's gonna be. And,
You had a note, you were gonna have Shane get on that, right?
yeah, we've had some conversation on it, and we thought that actually came back as, we probably need to do that. And you don't need to do it every year, but I think we need to do it on a regular basis.
Consistently,
Yeah.
every couple of years.
Yeah, because I don't think it's been touched since Radine was here. She was the last one to do it, so.
Anything else on that? Okay. So sheriff jail budget, we moved the alternate incarceration again. We moved, the roof for the $500,000 for the jail that they need. That's actually probably gonna end up being carryover money from this year because we thought they were gonna have some savings. And then we moved the indigent medical into here.
Okay, remind me, 500,000 for the whole roof? Or just the upgrades, including the whole building and the roof? Because if they're doing 500 grand for a roof, dude, we're gonna go get in the roofing business.
Right? No, there's
Right.
several.
Okay, I was like, dude, that's like,
Replace roof membrane.
so it's a TPO membrane. So this building and that building over there total was 180 grand. And that was, now, it gives some increase, but it shouldn't be as big as both of those together.
I don't remember where they got that. We talked.
I don't know where they got it from, but that's.
And I didn't bring my note in.
I know we talked about doing it, I just.
I know it's year 13 of 10.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
got
that's
no.
right.
No, they need to replace the roof, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if they're anticipating $500,000 for a roof, TPO membrane roof right now, I mean, it's expensive, don't get me wrong, but it's not
Okay.
$500,000 expensive.
We can have Tony come in on Thursday and we can talk to him about that, see where he got that number, or we can email him and ask him.
I just say
Or,
email us and figure out where it came from.
Okay, and then the other thing we could do is, I mean, we can always take it down, we're using reserves to
Because
cover it anyway.
I thought they had $500,000
So-
worth of repairs, I thought that was other stuff on top
Oh,
of.
no, there's more.
Just,
This is just the roof.
yeah, there's, dude, we're getting in the roofing business. Who wants to join me? 'Cause
No, it's been hot this summer.
we'll buy a quart of that out of it.
Well, he'll have to dig that out.
What's that?
He'll have to dig that out. one way
Oh,
or
yeah,
another.
that's a bidded item, but still, I mean.
So I'll check with Tony on that. And then, anything else on that? Okay. Commission budget, we moved the, veterans position to full-time. We moved the HR position, to full-time. Again, no grade changes. And then on the operating budget, we added computers. And that was it.
On the HR one, was that at grade 12?
That was the request from Ryan, but because we did no grade changes, we kept it at what Ruth was at, which was a grade 9. So if there's gonna be, again, we just did no grade changes.
Okay.
So,
Well, and I think on the grade change discussion, I think is where we're at with doing because you guys factored in the 3.5%.
Mhm.
I think we then need to go back and have some grade change discussions. Because there are a couple in there that we probably need to have a discussion about.
so we can get through all of this and then go from there.
Let's not do it all day.
Yeah.
So that's all we did on the budget.
Who's the cell phone stipend for on our budget?
Christie Davenport, we should add that comment
Yeah.
on there. Usually we have that listed in this part. Oh, and we did add that because when your guys' budget was requested, that wasn't requested. But she's currently doing it. So.
Do you want her to keep that? She's currently got it, but it wasn't requested.
For what?
For Christie's, I think so. For
Stipend?
Christie's stipend?
Yeah, I feel bad.
But she doesn't carry a second phone, that's her personal.
Yeah, it's her personal.
Yeah,
And
I think so.
I hate to say it, but it's too easy.
That's why we added it in. We
It's
thought
too
so.
easy to call Christie on her cell phone, especially you call the office, nobody answers, you call her cell phone and got it with her.
Yep. Good on that one?
Yep.
And same thing on next page, we didn't change anything. Okay, coroner, no changes to A, but we did change, we added hostess luncheons, $2,000, because when we go to Boise, we do their same day travel, he buys lunch. I have a policy that I'm gonna bring to you in, not next week, well, might be next week, not this week, might be next week. I already have it written, I just need to fill out the agenda request and budget to priorities. And then we changed fuel, for some reason they only had $1,000. He spent that in the first 6 months, driving to Boise, that goes pretty quick. So.
Especially this year.
Yeah, so we increased that to 3,000. And those were the only changes we made.
And on the corner with bumping that up, where does that put him? Well, never mind.
They just got the 3.5 total.
Yeah, no, never mind.
Okay, we did.
I was going down the wrong road.
Oh, okay. Per his request, we did add $6,000 for extra help so that there will be the elected coroner, the chief deputy, and
Help.
extra help. So that it's not two trying to run everything.
Right.
They might actually get a vacation, and then that way when, if somebody's on vacation and they're running an autopsy to Boise, somebody could be covering. So. Clerk of the court, we didn't make any changes other than we reduced their travel from 6,000 to 3,500, and that's just simply because after talking through with Jason, they never use it all because the state pays a portion of it.
Yeah.
So, and they also have this budgeted in district court for the other half of people that go. County operations, the highlights are we added, well, we had moved her discussion through the department meeting, we added 10,000 for leadership. We changed the capital, I adjusted the capital defense fund to 50,000. That matches revenue. We added 45,000 for the audit because that wasn't requested in the original budget. We adjusted down the juvenile facility donation to 600,000 because we're using more in reserves.
Okay.
So that should take that down. I took the budget and just took it times 67%, just to get us flag and then I rounded up. So that we're not short, because there will be potentially an adjustment from this year. If we use more, then we would have a little bit more that we'd have to pay in. We moved the jail money, that $350 that had been budgeted in there, we moved that to 0104. That's what's going to cover the roof.
Okay.
We added in $25,000 for grant match. Nancy originally said 50, but the two playground grants fell through, but we left 25 in there just as if a grant comes up that you feel appropriate to match, we've got something in there. The funding for the event center, that one did go, well, it went up from the department request, but it's a decrease from current year. Not by much, but a little bit. So that's at 547 versus 571 last year. His revenues were up a little bit, but there's just still so many unknowns that once we get a good year of leadership, and not COVID-induced factors, that might help. And then, we moved the.
There's my argument right there.
For what?
Quit giving it away.
Yeah, that's the number you can focus on. And
Blame it on me.
During the public hearing, when somebody comes in and complains about something, there you go. So anyways, those are,
I'm not even gonna look at you, Ernie. I'm just gonna own that one.
Just be like, yes, or
so I take it you did a waiver today.
a little bit. A little bit.
We covered our costs.
We
but not the-
adjusted.
Yeah.
All right. So, question?
Nope, good.
I think it gives you everything you need, hopefully. Grounds and maintenance, we added the full-time position. Oh. And we failed to take a part-timer out, so we
Sweet.
basically added a maintenance position and you still have your 3 part-timers. So, I guess add that as a new position. If you choose to take that out, we can.
Yeah.
But, and then we went ahead and projected Jeff's payout. If he doesn't go, he doesn't go, but it's better to have it in there
And,
early than late.
I'll tell you what, he's an amazing individual. Up there at the wellness complex, and the time that he's put in on the sprinkler system, besides doing his regular job, he got a little overtime over the 4th, but by golly, he worked hard.
I wanna know if we can hire him back as a sprinkler consultant. If he, I mean,
After 6 months, right?
I am dead, like,
Well,
I'm dead
depends on his
serious.
age.
Yeah,
If he goes full retirement, then
you can't.
we can come back. Well, a consultant is consultant, but part-time.
I mean, like, seriously, like, watching him wake that up and go through that, and
It's getting green in 100-degree heat, so he's doing a good
yeah,
job.
and I mean, no, like, and that's something that seriously thinking about that is why wouldn't we have if you had somebody that understands that can help train any replacements, but as you wake that system up to know how to go through that system and kind of that institutional knowledge, if he's here, I'm totally game with that.
A little tough to do when you're on a mission.
Yeah, I know. But I told him if he's not going anywhere.
B budget, we added computer supplies. And then, seems like we may have taken something down, but maybe not. We talked,
We put money in and then we took the money out.
well, we had talked about the AC units, but we left that in.
So
Right.
we had moved the rekey up.
Right, I'm not even on that page yet, though.
So with,
You're ahead of me.
You were in the building maintenance, so I think you actually were thinking of.
He was- he was gone, but he was gonna look and see if he can pay for some of the AC units that he wants to replace. He might have money, so we did leave, we talked about this. That's why we left it in there, because he was gone on vacation. And he's gonna try to pay for it this year. If he can, then we can take it out on your approved budget.
We
But
really need to, if we can stay on that and help him understand funds and expedite, because if he can pay for all that, let's get.
So he thinks that he can pay for one for sure and probably have it land here this year and possibly 2 out of this year's budget. So then you guys could take this down a bit, because that's really what he wants to do is those 2 that are next. So then we could just go 1, 1, 1, 1.
Do you take it down, or do you keep continuing on some of the maintenance projects?
Keep it up and
I would
just
probably keep it up and work on the other.
Because it's
maintenance
funded.
projects.
I
The-
mean,
And it's in
could-
special projects, so if something else came up, he could.
But the big thing is we're almost getting to the point on this building where we're getting back ahead of things, where we have been, I mean, you look at it, we've got the roof, we've got the lights, we've gotten, a lot of the HVAC systems have been done, but if we can get some of that caught up, then we're to the point where it's more lipstick and stuff like that, instead of major bone.
And it's building repairs, not special projects, but
Okay.
that still gives flexibility for
Yeah.
projects.
Okay.
And then what Katie was talking about is, on the next page, we had the rekey and the security film. One of the highlights that I failed to mention is we established a new department under this report, 0602 for court marshals and security. there was some disconnect between the court and Ballard on how to pay for things and where to pay for things. So by establishing a separate department for security, now we can give Ballard the abilities to pay for those claims, and it won't have to go through Carrie. So we moved this rekey and security film to that budget within district court, so that she's the one that takes care of it anyways. She's paying the bill instead of asking Jeff to pay for something that he's semi-coordinating, but it's being more coordinated through Ballard.
Yeah, I haven't seen her for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, Katie was spot on, we moved that down below. And then we also added the heat from P&Z into Jeff's budget, so that that's consistent. So, we did take out the sprinkler system. Jason and I joked, like you guys were joking about the road, $60,000 for sprinkler system.
So when I called him and talked with him about that, he got a bid for some landscaping and sprinklers a couple of years ago, and it came in at $30,000. And so he put in his budget request $60,000. He just doubled it.
For which one?
For here,
Okay.
for Jeff. And so
Well-
I said, let's have a number that's not just shooting shotgun out into the dark in budget.
Well, the main thing too is and I've talked to Jeff about this, about the landscaping part, and part of what we want to do is there needs to be a parapet wall poured on the sidewalk coming up, because it's a security hazard, because there's nothing that stops a car from coming. And so part of that, and that would be fairly expensive. That would
Right.
probably be 10 or 15 grand. So
Right.
I don't think you're out of the ballpark, but it's not just landscaping. There are some security upgrades that we need to this building. And we're in the docket, and I don't know when the city hotel is going to hear it. We're supposed to vacate 6th Street, and then we don't actually have correct ADA parking right now. And so we need to take that street and bring it back, and then we need to turn the parking to where you would actually park in on the street. So we do that. So that's where I would say that's 60 grand.
But he had it in there for sprinklers.
Yeah, it's not sprinklers.
That's where I was going too.
And it's not sprinklers,
We're
so
talking
we
about
took it
that
out.
street, so then we talk about extra funds if we have extra funds.
Right.
That's where I would do
That's
it.
something,
That'd be a
that's something.
capital project
Yes.
that we
Exactly.
included in.
But
So
That's exactly
We
right.
took that 60 out.
Okay.
So if that's something you guys want to add, that's something we'll need to go back.
Well, I
and
think
look
that,
Because it was just a shotgun, and it
Right.
wasn't,
yeah.
it was
Well, and I
60
think that
gallons
might
for
be
sprinklers.
more of a discussion of infrastructure
Mhm.
in a granting side.
Yeah.
I mean, because really, I don't know how we haven't had a car drive through the courthouse.
Either side.
As many drunk people have hit
This
like,
side and this side?
I come to work on Monday mornings, or I go to my parents' house on Sunday morning, and you know how many of these side streets, there's at least 2 or 3 cars that get T-boned every night. I mean, I don't know how.
So anyway, that is out. So if that's something you
Okay.
want to add, we'll have to go back.
So,
We'll look
yeah,
at it.
make a
Just-
note,
yeah,
because
make a
we
note.
should chat about it.
Okay. Contingency, we left at 300,000. Ag extension, the only change we made in here was the 4-H, that outside checkbook. I matched that with revenue. She didn't have that number, so I included that in the clerk's recommendation.
Then the health insurance drop, what's
Yeah.
the deal?
So that's when we
The other-
first started,
Okay.
because we're using reserves.
Mhm.
Instead of charging 15,873 per person, it's now 12,438.
Just look through their history, they dropped quite a bit.
Yeah. You should have, I think Katie provided you with the health insurance sheets, didn't she?
Yeah,
Yes.
one of the mini sheets that I gave you this morning in that pile is the health insurance allocation.
And what we,
That's the breakdown per person and for the person.
and we charge it on the number of bodies in the department. So, any questions on IT? There were a few changes, but not much from the department request. Like I said, we added the software support for Tyler in line 428.2. We also added in here 55,000 for Esri. Jason, do you want to talk about that?
Yep, so I'll talk about that. I mentioned to Ernie the other day that the Esri contract that we have is kind of a duplicate. The state has a blanket contract that Brian, and I wish Brian was here. He has looked at the contract. He has a copy of our current contract with Esri, and he thinks at this point that we should be able to fall under that blanket contract that the state has, that they provide for different municipalities, which we would have to pay nothing. So we moved it to Adam's budget so that then it wasn't reallocated in GIS and or tried to get reallocated. We're not 100% sure at this point if we'll be able to fall under that blanket contract, but Brian has said everything so far looks like we should. Adam thinks everything so far looks like we should. So we want to keep the money just because we can't be without it.
Yeah.
So we put it in Adam's budget for safekeeping, and if we don't need to use it, then we won't use it. And if we fall under that state contract.
That was really the only change in that budget. We did do a little bit of reallocation. People put one-time costs in capital, and then we reallocate it where it needs to be actually spent when we do the quick recommendation. So those two items, Katie moved up to 815, because that's where it'll be bought. On that? Juvenile probation, the next 3 pages are Matt Olson's. The only change in here, again, was we got rid of the attrition to the clinical director position and created a probation officer and a coordinator. All the dollars fall within what that clinical director position would have cost. So no change there. He doesn't have an operating budget. And then the next 2 pages are just the same thing. So basically just COLA's added. Planning, no changes to A. We added computers, and then they ended up getting 3. So within the time frame of putting this together, we brought that back down to what they need. We did add CityWorks, so that can be a discussion if we leave it or take it out. We did get rid of, and we got rid of the heat and put that in Jeff's budget. How's that? And the CityWorks is 33,000. So if we need to play with that dollar amount.
You know, about leaving that in there, Hal was pretty proud of how he brought that budget down.
He was. But you know what, it's still less. Only about $8,000, but it's still less.
You did a good job.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some of that went to the engineer budget, so. Skip the next page, that just has history in it from when we used to budget health insurance in there. Now it's in the trust. Special projects, we changed nothing in here, other than the COLA. He's got $17,000 for building repairs within his department.
Keep it as this.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's got some money in there for just some general small stuff, but it needs, but if it's a major thing, it needs to come from the department or building.
You took out the temporary service, labor service?
We moved that up into the special project fund.
Like an overtime?
The temp service is for things outside hires, and he just requested that we put back up in.
Building
the
repairs.
Building repairs.
Instead of temp service.
Yeah,
Okay,
because then if he needs it, he can use it there.
gotcha. Okay.
Sorry, I missed that one. And so far, all of these changes, we've talked to the department on. We'll get some farther in the back, but we did end it.
I didn't tell Cindy that we were moving that Esri out of her budget into the, either the commission or into IT.
The share budget, these are the employees that work at D6. I am not 100% sure that D6 can fund these positions yet, so we're still subsidizing that. I don't have a good, I emailed, it was on Saturday, I emailed Ashley and Teresa and asked them about revenues for this, because they have to give us what's share and what's D6. And the dollars I have, I've only got one month, and it's not enough. So this might be another year of supplement. Probation, we only did the COLA. Did we have anybody else we needed to put senior probation?
No.
No, is anybody eligible, do you remember? I think everybody else is fairly new, right?
I think everybody that was eligible moved up, and then we had a whole bunch of new people, right?
Because
For
it's
counseling.
5 years, right? Seems like the criteria was 5 years for senior probation officer.
It's 3 or 5.
Okay. Whoop, double check. They didn't request anything in that line. So, but we can double check with them if you would like. See if she's gonna need anything.
Well, we'll find out.
Okay. I don't think they do, because I think there's like a 3 or 5 year criteria, and they've got 3 new probation officers. So. Operating, we added computer supplies, and that was all we changed for them. We left the camera equipment in there, pending the move for public defenders. That may not be needed if they move across the street, but because that hadn't been decided yet, we just left.
Just left it.
So, we can always just tell them they can't spend it if they end up moving. So. GIS, no grade changes, no new positions.
Why did study drop from FY '21 from 37.5 to 30, or from the request of 40? Well, that was the grade change.
And that, if you look and see, that's a Heather moved, so if there's a last name with a slash, that means she moved positions. So she was in that GIS specialist line, and she moved up to a GIS analyst.
Oh,
So
right.
she's actually in the line below.
Gotcha.
So, and we will, tomorrow, I'll go in and check payroll and see if we have any other employee changes that may affect dollar amounts. Usually anything from this point forward, will just be new hires, so salaries might go down a little bit, but until we do a finalized budget, I like to update that and make sure we're not gonna have any increases.
So she technically has an open position?
She did, I think she just hired for it.
Okay.
But at the point that we did this, which was when I updated everything, it hadn't been filled
Hadn't
yet.
been done yet.
But I think I just saw the salary for reform maybe this week or last week, probably last week, so. We took out her computer supplies because it wasn't on the list. And we took out the Esri. And those were the changes we made to the budget. And when we send her budget, maybe let her know that Esri was moved to IT.
I'll do that.
And if she has any questions, call Jason.
I'll remind me and I'll do that.
Okay.
You're welcome. In my house, that's called proving your love. Prove your love to me, and you do it. Dirty diapers.
Which we're, on the lunch break, we're hoping to send budget sheets out to departments, because nobody has seen this yet. Until we provide it to you, we don't give it to departments. We have
As
talked,
many as possible.
yeah, we have talked to departments, most, but, Road and Bridge, so Kyle's split is now 50-50 with the landfill. Tyson is 75% Road and Bridge, 25% landfill. And the position changes, the only position change was they got rid of the attrition, a mechanic, and made it an equipment operator. So when you see a new but it's gone, it was just a change in description. You guys had approved that. We did make one change to his overtime. We put it back at what it was in the current year, as opposed to allowing him to take a $13,000 increase.
And so he came in, and he may want to chat with you about this when he comes in again. I told him, I feel pretty strongly that when he's got those guys plowing snow, and they're working on a week, so they work a full week, and then say we do get a storm on Saturday, Sunday, but then everything's clear and easy on Monday. Send them home on Monday, Tuesday. Don't pay them overtime, because things are slower during the winter time as it is. I have less of a problem with his summer overtime when you have a few months that are prime to get roads done. But I kind of have a hard time when there's guys that are not having to work as hard after they are getting paid overtime on a Saturday, Sunday, and then doing a little bit more twiddling the thumbs on Monday, Tuesday when they take your time then. So I had that conversation with him, and I don't know how you feel about that, but
Kind of felt beat up a little bit, I think.
he did feel a little bit beat up because I didn't hold any punches when I chatted with him about that. So I told him,
And the problem is, yeah, I get you're calling people in, but you're scheduled Monday through Friday, or Monday through Sunday, and your schedule is you're on these days. But if you come in and work, then you're gonna, if there's no snow to push, and still getting paid overtime, you're just not coming in those days.
yeah, that's so.
And he
That's all there is to it.
He communicated frustration about people not answering their phone. We had the conversation of, at the jail, they have a bubble. And if you're on the bubble, because you will be called in, and if you don't come in, you get written up. Actually, I think they might fire you. But you only get, I mean, you know the weekends that you are on call.
So
So it's,
there's two bubbles, isn't there? There's like the first bubble and then second too. So if the first bubble doesn't answer, then the second.
yeah. So we explained to other people, we worked it out, and they have a bigger facility and they're 24/7, like they are in the winter. So there were options given, but it's just a mindset change. So we talked about that a little bit. So he may bring that up, and you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I told him it was a bull crap system.
What is?
I said it straight to him, and I told him, you've got to start fixing that, because it's just,
It's a good old
it's
boy club,
ridiculous.
and
It's,
this is how they kind
it
of
is.
talk it. So, but anyway,
I don't know if he'll bring it up or not, but I put his budget back down where it was.
Told him out
Christie
of
said,
leadership.
okay.
But he better come in because his probation's about up. We gotta make sure he's gonna stay here or not.
Which I thought was a good comment.
on his operating, we did discuss these changes with him. We took his operating supplies for roads down. We had it at 360, but then ultimately ended up putting it at 389, but it is a decrease. We put fuel at 250, the fuel rebills, which is a revenue match, at 200,000. And then we moved his road oil We took it down to 1.4. The only one he expressed some concern about is his fuel. He thinks he might need that higher. And I said, well, if you would like to take that from your road oil, then it's fundable. But where we've taken all the money we can, property tax wise, if he wants any changes to his budget, it'll have to come from reserves. So. But he felt he could live within.
This.
And our initial meeting with him was actually more cuts than this, so we gave him a little bit more so he was happy. Engineer, we left his A budget, did not give him the new position, and then we did do a little bit of adjustments. We didn't talk to him about this, but we did a few adjustments on his operating, just simply because of usage. So we took down office supplies a little bit, we took down operating supplies a little bit. Everything we took down because he needed the extra position. So, he had this based on 2 people. He only has 1 person. So basically anything that would have fed 2 people, we dropped. And then his increases were because he took on the stormwater, and he has in here the surveyors.
Mike had sent me a text message last week, and he did state that he's getting to the point with calculations and other things that we're doing that he would really like to discuss the tech part. And I really think that if you look at a county for our size, most counties, Twin Falls, they have an engineer and they have 3 or 4 techs in the office. We are getting away from using our county engineer, and we're contracting out things which we start having problems with because they're not the county engineer by law. And so I have a real hard time of, well, Mike's busy and he can't handle it, or he can't do this, or however we do that. The problem I have is we're contracting out things that should not necessarily just be that department going and doing that. It has got to flow through the county engineer. And I'm getting a little frustrated by it because we keep contracting things out that may or may not need to be contracted out. But if those things do need to be contracted out, it has got to come through the engineer's office. It does not come through those other offices for liability reasons. And so we need to probably look at that. We need to have staff there for the engineer's office to be successful. And I understand right now that we have an engineer that's getting, we have discussions about that. But we need to probably set that office up to be successful, and it's not being productive, then that's a different discussion. But if we're having, we just don't have enough staff in there to do the job first, I have a problem with that, especially when we look at the other sizes of other counties and what those engineering offices are doing.
Well, I'm not so sure we're as busy as the engineer says we are.
Well,
Simply because when I was at that meeting the leadership meeting the other day, he's telling one department that he's working on this project, and he's telling the other department he's working on this project, and neither project's being worked on.
well, and that's what I'm saying is I understand those issues of that, but what I'm saying is work is being contracted out, it's not flowing through that office. That office does not have the capacity for review right now. We have naturally hamstringed that office to where they cannot be. They don't have the capacity to be involved in some of that stuff.
Well, part of that I guess I misunderstand, because if we contract out with an engineering firm.
But they're not the engineer of the county under state law.
But they are engineers, and they stamp the project, which means that they're doing what we have paid them to do.
But why are we bringing it outside of our office? And again, the only people that can review that is an engineer. That's the problem that comes back to. But the problem is it comes back to, if somebody else is stamping that set of plans, none of our staff can have any comment about it. The only person that can argue that under law is another engineer. So if they screw up on something, you can't even review it And to have Kyle and those guys reviewing plan, or looking at it, they don't have the qualifications to do that. The problem is they're going outside our engineering office. If there's engineering services that need to be done, it's not those departments that go do that. Paragon and those guys that came in and talked about like the carbon credit, those guys just go straight to them, and that's not how that should be done. We should have an RFQ for requests for engineering qualifications on every project we do. We shouldn't be using one specific engineering office over and over and over again. This is fundamentally broken, and the way we start fixing it, first, we have got to have staff in there to where, and then the leadership portion of whether the correct application of time is then our issue to deal with. But we cannot expect them to follow through the engineering tasks of the county without having proper staff inside the county. We have one engineer in an office, when we really should have, Twin Falls, I think, has a principal, and then they have some EITs and a drafting person. Bonneville County, I think, has 6 in their department. We have fundamentally hamstrung that engineer to where they cannot perform the tasks they're required to by state law.
Do you happen to know what they're spending with outside engineers, by chance?
I have to look, we've got them spread all over.
And it's not just
in the landfill.
I know landfill is a heavy user.
I think landfill's the biggest.
And it's not just the outside fact of that, but it's when those things come in to make sure that the engineering was met to the level that it needs to be met at. Did they actually do what we asked them to in that task? And does that engineering calc, all those EDFs, all that stuff, is all of that to standard? Who reviewed that?
So there's 20,000 in Road and Bridge. There is in landfill, that one's gonna be buried, so we'll have to look. 25 is what's budgeted for next year, so that's not buried. And then 25 in gas system, so we've got 70 budgeted.
See, and what I'm saying is it's not that you're going to take all that money and just make a person out of it. We have all this engineering work. We're doing $70,000 worth of engineering work, and you have one person that is reviewing that. There's a lot of stuff that comes in there. We had Corinne that was doing a bunch of just the supplemental engineering work. And while I'm not saying that the application of time probably isn't correct, what I'm saying is the positions and the organizational structure, we need to have a much more involved engineering department in a lot of these projects that are going on. I don't know why we haven't bid out for those engineering things. We don't have an RFP. We haven't went out. We have some of the largest engineering firms in Pocatello and Idaho Falls, and yet we're using a guy out of Twin Falls. And this is the problem that we have.
There's a history behind it.
Road and Bridge, and I know the history behind it, and I'm being very careful.
Is probably why you're bringing it up.
I'm being very careful of what I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
Road and Bridge and landfill and planning and zoning and all those people do not handle those contracts. They don't deal with the engineering work. They say we need engineering work. The engineer then writes the RFP and the RFQ. They're the ones that send that out for the engineer's proposals. They're the ones that handle it. They're the ones that talk to them. They're the ones that do it. And if they don't do that, then they're not doing their job. Road and Bridge and landfill should not be giving design specs and all of that other stuff. Well, I don't doubt that they can't build it. I have no question that they can build it. The problem is, by law, they cannot question the design of another engineer. The only other person that can do that is our office. And so our office needs to have some staff in there to be able to do that. Now, then we handle the rest of it.
To me, then, we need to call in the engineer, Road and Bridge, and planning and zoning, and have this discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, we'll look at possibly adding an engineering tech after we get through the rest of this. Does that work?
I would say at least a tech.
Okay.
We need to have somebody there that's helping.
Okay. So let's keep going through so we can try and get through this before noon, and then this afternoon, it'll be tight, but we'll try and get through this real quick in the next half an hour, and then that way we can go back and look at the things you want to get. Does that work?
Okay.
Okay. Sheriff, we added a patrol, and we added the evidence tech. I did take up 207K just a hair because of the COLA, and that's line 4902. We talked to Tony about any changes we made. One of the changes, the only change we made really in this department is patrol fuel. We took it down to 140 just simply based on usage. Any other changes within this was because of the added patrol position. So Teresa gave us a list of items that follow with a new position. So, for example, like the investigations, the communications, a vehicle, another lease on a vehicle. We did take down photography because they made that purchase this year, the $3,000. Increased uniforms, that went up because of the one position. We took away property acquisition request because they're going to buy that this year. You guys approved that last week. And critical equipment went up for the one position. So those were the only changes in there. Tony was good with everything. Prosecutor, we added a prosecutor position. Down in operating, we added $15,000 for their carpool system that was not budgeted for by the department. And then we also adjusted the Westlaw LexisNexis for the appropriate amount for their department. And we had moved the trial expenses into here from your budget. So 109. Any questions? I'm going too fast, let me slow down.
We'll let you know.
Jail, we took out the detention positions that the department originally requested, but that was talked about when he came in. I did adjust the 207K again by, we had taken that down. It looks different from the department request because we took out the 6 deputies, but then I took it up a little bit from what Teresa thought because she didn't know we were doing the COLA. So there's that. We adjusted computer supplies per Adam. Most of the adjustments are because we took out the 6 positions. And then we moved a couple of things. So line 610, we moved into their general fund department, that's $65,000. We adjusted in building maintenance. So building maintenance, we did reduce some. Within their book, we went through this with Tony, Mike, and Teresa. We attritioned out $226,000 to PILT, and those are the ARPA projects. And then we did reduce $224,500. Those were lower priority projects that he was good with dropping. We moved the medical into the 0104 budget, and then the property acquisition request he's buying this year in current dollars. So those were the only adjustments there. And again, he was good with those. Ambulance district, no change from the department request.
Okay.
He is supposed to come talk to you about potentially buying the chase vehicle this year. He thought he may have funds, but I haven't seen anything from him yet. District court, there's some adjustments because we added a department. 0602 is going to be court marshals and security, and we moved lines associated with them into there. We also cut the retirement payout because only one person is in this department and the other 2 potentials were court marshals. So that got split between the departments.
So that was all in Fund 1206, right?
Yes, but if you turn the page, you'll see, 2 pages, you'll see the 0602.
Okay.
But if you look at the fund total, it shouldn't be, fund total is,
It looked like it's a million short.
yeah.
I was just curious.
That is because,
I'll be right back, guys.
okay. Why is it? That one might need to look at. Oh, because we took out the $750 for the courtroom remodel.
Oh.
Yeah, and that will either go into Carrie's trust or the capital acquisitions trust. So that's the $750 difference there. We'll double check that total still. It still might be a little bit.
Well, it wasn't.
So, we'll double check that one, but that was basically the only changes. We didn't, we adjusted the Westlaw, LexisNexis, for an increase. He pays out of their, Kerry pays out of their $1,200 for Westlaw, $1,800 for Idaho Suite, and then we pay $6,200 for judges to have access to Westlaw. So we did adjust that. Other than that, we really didn't, I mean, we didn't take anything down other than the remodel. And I think that was also more for discussion purposes. The court marshals, the only thing we did was we, again, attritioned things out. We put the building rekey in here and then the weapons scan in here and basically just put all of their costs into this department. Harold, $750 for the juvenile remodel.
Oh, okay, yeah, I just curious, whenever you
Yeah.
saw that big a
No,
dump, I was
good.
like,
Yeah.
did
No.
we forget that?
You scared me for just.
I was like, did we forget to add something?
Yeah, did you miss a total in the
Is there a
file?
line that got a 0 instead of, you know?
Yeah, well, we had that this morning, but anyways, we caught it. Fair maintenance. So we did do a couple of adjustments in here. We have not talked to the fair board. But we assumed you may not have heartburn with these changes, so let us know. Under special projects, we took the $50,000 down to just the sheet barn of $3,500. And then we adjusted the temp workers from 10,000 to 7,000. And then for the lumberyard development of that, we cut that in half and put it at 100,000. Do you have any heartburn on this?
I don't care to develop a lumberyard property for $100,000.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I have no,
Well, they,
I want a plan. You're talking about numbers?
Right.
You know, $60,000 for a sprinkler system? I want a plan. Yeah, I mean, you tell me exactly what you want to do, and we can talk about it. $100,000 to just give to them?
well, and the,
No.
do you want to bring them in? Do you want to cut it?
for me personally, the problem is I don't care to expand that facility. So you're gonna put another $100,000 into it to make what? $5,000 a week?
Their plan
For
was.
a year?
Yeah, pretty much, but their plan was to try to get an enclosed area so they could charge for a concert. Or
Well, they have
they
an,
could try to have events down there.
they have an enclosed area. The bottom of the fence,
One of the
and it's there.
things-
They just don't wanna do it. And so my problem is again, you want $100,000 for something that might make you a couple $1,000s 1 week a year. I just don't see the benefit, and I don't know. No, I just, no, like, it's the dumbest thing ever. No, I mean, that's just,
Kind of was terrible on that one.
So, to this point, one of the things that was interesting to me in one of the conversations that I had with Jamie is they want to expand and do all these, several other events outside of the fair. And well, you are the fair board. And it's just because you're kind of in charge of the fairgrounds, that doesn't become your kingdom.
A second event center.
yeah.
Right.
And the problem is if they're gonna go down that road, then the fair better pay for itself. Because every other fair in the state that does that has those amounts, they don't get half the support that they do because they're fundraising the whole year to pay for the fair.
Well, and maybe they just need to change the calendar a little bit, and maybe if they want to charge for a concert, they do it in the arena, which has bleachers, and that's what everybody else does. That's what Twin does, that's what Blackfoot does. So maybe they just need to adjust the
They
schedule a
have-
little bit and be able to hold the.
They have $10,000 worth of temporary fencing that they can put up on that field, and the city is not gonna have a problem with them charging a ticket. And I
So
have a
you-
problem with them just giving that as an excuse.
Cut it?
Take it out. I'm just at the point that we've had discussion after discussion about whose ground is what, and whatever, and nobody's done anything with it. Go ahead and prove to me that you're interested in what is fairgrounds and talk to the city of Downey, and I'll move forward as a fair board to identify your property, and then we can talk about improving it.
Okay, so do you want any other changes or just take out the 100? Is everything else okay?
Yeah, just take the 100 out.
Okay.
Well, hold on. I got so caught up by the 100, I might have had other things that I might.
We did reduce, there are other projects we reduced from 50 to 3,500 just to do the sheep barn.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we cut was the temp workers. So 2,000 for pest control and 5,000 for temp workers,
Okay.
so. Okay.
And out of that 100,000, we already have it there, all of them barns need to be re-roofed, all kinds of stuff on them. I'd have no problem putting $50,000
Yeah, I don't have a
in
problem.
there towards maintenance, or
Okay.
And cleanup, but not
Well,
just.
they've got 25, oh, that's electrical. They've got 30 for general maintenance. So we could increase that dollar amount, and you could give them the direction that our county buildings
They're
need some
falling
maintenance.
down.
If you would like to do that, we can increase that a little bit. Do you want to talk about it more later,
Well,
or do you just want to do it?
let's increase that by 30,000 to 60,000 total.
Yep, let them do that, but
And
all those buildings need to be done.
That is specifically
We're not-
intended to upgrade what we currently have.
So
We're not
we'll
gonna
make a note.
add more
Is that
before we-
good?
We'll make a note in the notes that says upgrade current buildings. Will that work?
Yep.
And then that way that shows intent of what you want done with the money.
Yeah.
Okay. For exhibit, Jason had a conversation with Jamie because,
She wanted to go full-time.
Nope.
And I said, maybe a way that you could swing it, get some more hours, but not going full-time, and including benefits and all of that, is becoming one of the, good grief, now lost, temp. We could make her position go from part-time to temp, and then she would have to be on 5 months and take a month off. And she would have, and she was like, well, when do I do it? Then this is when the conversation came up. We want to do all these other events and things, and in my mind I'm thinking, you're for the fair, and that's it. So,
It's not the same position you had up there.
no,
She's just trying to make it done.
yeah.
but
So,
she is putting in,
she's putting in too many hours right now, and I don't know.
Well, we're gonna have to send back to the fair board. This is your budget, this is what you have. If you violate these hours,
Well, she can't.
you can't.
By law.
By law, you can't do it.
Cannot, right?
I think that's gonna be an issue that we're gonna need to, have a discussion about, probably in an executive session.
We,
Okay.
we do not allow any other department to do it.
Nope.
Nope.
Right.
If you do it, we're
Plain
gonna,
and simple.
Now, so Jason's
Okay.
recommendation has her at 23,1, which is temporary. That still is a decrease over last year's budget. And then we allowed $6,000 for extra help. Note, none of these employees in here, Saul nor Jamie, are getting a COLA simply because they're not on the salary plan. They're just being paid a dollar amount. So they're not within my schedule.
Well,
So
fair
I'm just-
board,
Yeah. but I'm
give
just-
them a raise last year.
So I'm just letting you guys know that they're not getting COLAs. So, that's what we did with that budget, and we didn't change, we reduced $1,000 within their operating, and that was just, office equipment. Because we took out, I believe, the printer that they wanted, based on conversations that they can go to,
She has no pipe
Office
function.
Max or something. The county fair budget, we did make some reductions, again, that we didn't talk to them about, but we put fair awards back to last year's $15,000 amount, or not last year's, this year. We put $4,000 more in advertising. compared to last year, but it's a $4,000 reduction of what they requested. We put the rodeo back at $20,000, which is equivalent to FY '21's. We did add $1,000 for security because when they have concerts, like this year, they're gonna have to pay $1,000 for the week's events. And we used to have that in the budget and somehow it got taken out. So we put that 1,000 back in here. It's a little bit of an increase over last year, but last year we knew we hadn't. Last year we took the budget down just simply because we had a lot of not last year, this year. Sorry, I'm already in 22. 21's budget, we took the entertainment down because we knew we had the costs already paid. So, the 22 request is still less than 20's request, which was a normal.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to the problem I have is we're spending $85,000 for a concert.
No, it's not just the concert.
Well, I know, but by the
For
time.
the week's entertainment.
For the week's entertainment. But still, why do we have free entertainment at the expense of the taxpayer?
It's no different than having certain events up at the wellness complex
That
that
are-
you waive fees for.
Well.
This is a county fair, so it's supposed to be a family event that you guys subsidize.
So what's a fair by Webster's dictionary?
I know.
It's a celebration of confections at a given time
Yep.
and animal husbandry.
Would you
And
like
so
to?
I'm about ready to bring my dog, and somebody's going to bring a pie, and we're going to meet up on Kimport Peak, up where the county owns the tower, and that's going to be the new fairgrounds, the square yard of dirt. And I'm getting really to the point where, again, we have events that we do up here, but they're charging events. There's stuff going on. There are events that we do for charity that are up there, but we talk about doing a concert up there, and we spend $80,000 on it, and it's recouping our cost and getting our money back out of it. That's the main thing, and there's no discussion about that here.
And we require them to come before us to get the discount.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's always been a free fair, so they followed suit. They are trying to recoup some costs. This year, I think they did they have a better plan than I've heard in the past of trying to charge for things to bring some more money in. It's never, I don't believe it's ever
I
gonna
mean,
pay for itself.
the-
So you can choose to cut this if you want and not have what we have, or we can leave it as is. So what would you like us to do?
I just look at it. We have a rodeo for 20 grand. Why are we paying for a rodeo?
We never used to pay for the rodeo, but because the Lions aren't doing it anymore, it got dumped in our lap.
So why are we doing it?
But they do charge for the rodeo.
Okay, but so,
And what do they do with the money?
yeah, they gave it to Marsh Valley last year, or 2 years
They
ago.
split it between rodeo teams.
They don't actually recoup and pay costs with it.
Know that they're gonna do that this year?
I don't either.
Last year was last.
And I don't know how they had
2 years
permission to
ago.
do that,
Yeah.
because that was revenue that came to the county, and then they made a decision without us.
So
There's definitely some learning that needs to continue to happen.
It's very much so.
we can.
I'd leave it right now.
Okay, and then maybe what we do is maybe sometime in September, you have a meeting with them and say, okay, this is the deal, this is what we expect with this money. If we don't see what we want, then next year might not be as generous.
Yeah, it's a discussion.
It's
It's
a
just-
hard discussion.
Well,
too,
it's just getting to the point
obviously.
because I look at the other counties that do this, and the budget rules state monies you have on hand, monies you plan to raise, and what is needed to become whole by the county. And we just need to become whole by the county. There's, how much funds in revenue is the fair bringing? How much revenue funds are they contributing this year to operation of the fair? That was kind of my conversation point. is what I was
So
doing.
By the time they pay their employees, they're not contributing anything.
I anticipate 42 minus 18, so 24,000,
In revenue is what they're bringing in.
and some of that's sales tax.
So let me rephrase that. By the time they pay their part-time help, they're not contributing anything.
Okay, 4-H, the only change in this department is.
Before we move forward though, have you had any discussions with Sheldon or are all your discussions with Jamie?
No, my only question was, I called Jamie to talk with her about, because she was the one full-time, and I said, do you really need that many hours? And she says, and she told me that she's working too many hours, and she knows it. and that's a problem. I said, can you get by if we did you as a temp?
And we probably should.
But we haven't had any conversation with the chairman or with the board.
No.
Okay,
When's the next,
just had one last week,
okay, well, and
the next one.
some of the budget adjustments we didn't talk to departments on. Most of them we did, just so it wasn't a surprise. We could meet with them, well, at this point, we're gonna get the clerk's recommendation and
Honestly, let's see if they call us.
Yeah.
most of the
I mean, there-
budget changes we've made, we just talked to the bigger departments that impact some of the, granted that's a capital request, that'll impact them, but most of the operating really doesn't affect them as much on the salaries. If they don't want the temp position, then, we can do what we did last year and just go in and nutrition it back to part-time. But regardless, they're not gonna get it full-time because you guys already stated you didn't want that. So this was an attempt to compromise. And hopefully the fair
Yeah.
board would see the value of having
And
her more.
we knew as we were talking about this, that let's put it out there pretty evenly, and then we're gonna have to have a discussion. And we knew this discussion was coming. Because when she told me that they're doing wanting to do all these other events, well, that's outside your scope. So,
Well, and within your bigger discussion, I've just heard rumblings of items that the fair board is wanting to pursue, that's outside the fair scope, with the grounds down there. And so that might need to be a discussion that
Well,
they
I
need to
can-
involve you in because they're outside the scope of fair week.
when Scott and I stopped by there and I get a call from Sheldon right after that for suggesting that they actually charge people to use those arenas.
And this kind of goes back to the problem we had with when the fair was up here, and we had a very active fair board that was delegating work to the workers up there, and it caused some discontent within the commission. That might be a path that needs to back in again, maybe,
It's a conversation.
and a reminder of
Serious
whose facilities
conversation.
with their own. So, 4-H, we can hit, a couple of these are gonna be super fast. 4-H, the only change we made was the grant match, that's that outside checkbook. Health department, that one's a no-brainer. Historical, we moved the roof to Pilt for potential ARPA funds. Other than that, we gave them what they needed. Indigent, the only adjustment was a budget. We moved Mandy again because we had cushioned her to treasurer's office. We didn't do anything with operating. We do have paperwork placed in here. That might fall underneath your RFP. When you make a note. In the direct services, we left this as Chantel requested. Public defenders, we did not make any position changes here. They still have, if they choose to move someone in here, it's because there's an opening, but we didn't add positions. We didn't change
Less than the
seniors.
grant.
Yep, and we didn't change no grade changes, so no seniors per the department request. Under operating, we did add computers for IT's request. The one question I have is on conflict attorneys. Do I need to increase that for another contract? Did we add a contract?
No,
We have
no,
not
it's the
added.
same
Still one.
contract.
Okay,
We did add
perfect.
some funds
Okay.
because of one group coming in and inheriting a caseload, which,
I just
yeah.
wasn't clear on that, so I wanted to verify. I did take that up to the 372 in case there's an increase.
Okay.
So that can be a discussion if we don't need to do that. It was at 300 with the department request. We upgraded the Westlaw LexisNexis. We took the murder trials out because they tend to, and I think that came about through, I don't remember if that was just in our discussion. because they utilize so much money through, district court, for their assistance with, psych evals and, those kinds of things. That's covered in district court, so we kind of felt like that was double budgeted, plus they haven't utilized those funds for the last few years. So we took that out. We also took out $500 from capital or office equipment, just simply because there was no explanation.
Well, part of that was the computers.
Oh,
That's right.
Two up there, the other 4,000 was just a buffer.
So, that was a change there. Any heartache? Okay, no changes to the court-ordered public defenders. Those are outside the scope of the contract. Junior college, we left at 50. Event center. We need a break now? Because I'm not sure we'll be able to get done before noon.
I'm okay.
Yeah, let's hit,
Okay.
let's
We should be able to get this done within the next 20 minutes, maybe.
Okay.
Event center, we did work with Scott on this. Other than, this morning we made a change. He had no extra help in overtime either. So we added the 40,000 and the 10,000. He had not requested that, but I think that was an oversight on his part. These do include all of the positions that have been improved this
Okay.
FY. Operating supplies, we put back to 15,000, which was the same as FY '21. He was good with that. I think he was just looking at, well, he said he was looking at the FY '20 column when he did his recommendation. He didn't realize they were chronological. So the fuel, we put at 20 just based on usage. It didn't look like it needed to be at 25. Special projects, we did reduce that to 52,000, but for the explanation right there, 48 of it's going to be paid for through waterways funds.
Okay.
So he was good with that. And those were the only changes we made, and he was good with all of those.
I question the fuel a little bit, not just because our cost, and we haven't had a good full year.
Well, and prices are not going down right
Activities
now.
up there.
You think about the fuel is only being used within the facility. Prior years, we were running down south.
To
Yeah.
county.
So,
They are saying that fuel could hit another increase of 20 to 30% this next year. I mean, that's just
if we need to look at everybody's fuel, we can take those up. But in FY '19, they used 26,000, and again, that was because they were running back and forth. Plus, we didn't have,
We didn't have the.
We didn't know how much fuel was
How
actually
fuel-
going
yes,
where.
exactly.
We didn't have the
Right.
fuel locks in
I
place.
was trying to figure out how to say that.
We can leave it there. It's just
Okay.
an area that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be close
Yeah.
possibly, but we really don't have a good basis to go off of at this point.
And people aren't taking vehicles home, and they were in 19,
Yep.
so. But definitely, if we can change that if we need to.
Okay.
talking about taking vehicles home, I guess Jamie stopped by our office and asked about taking a vehicle to the fair. That is her work location. So she doesn't get to take a vehicle from here to drive to
That
work.
was my bad. That was my bad. I'm the one that mentioned that to her.
Yeah,
But she will,
no,
Yeah.
that's all I
That's
said.
a work
no.
location.
no, I didn't even think about that being her work location. The only thing we had talked about was she was bringing money back and forth to our office. She was gonna be bringing money back every day. So that was
Well, what are they bringing
where-
money bags for? They're not charging for anything, so.
Well, they are gonna have some money, so Friday night, they're doing some raffles, they're doing some donations, some random things like that,
And honestly, the thing that should happen with the fair down there is we should have an account in Downey State Bank or whatever it is now, Ireland.
Ireland
And
Bank.
they
You walk
deposit.
over and you deposit it in the bank and you don't carry it anywhere.
And they don't touch it. And all you're doing is
So we
you're
have
just,
to receipt it.
I
Well,
just,
but here's the only negative
we're
of
doing a night
that,
drop.
is it's an outside account, so unless we make it a Bannock County account that our office is responsible
No,
for.
that's
Which we could work that out, but probably not in the next 2 weeks.
no, well,
But what we can do is our office can, during the week, make a run down there and get the cash, and then that way we're not having to, but that was totally my bad. I told her to stop
I
and
would- I-
and
And just
ask
like
for a
up here,
vehicle,
though.
because I wasn't thinking about that being her home location.
I appreciated when you guys went up there and helped with, up the event center, and two of you went up to get the money. It's just one of
Yeah, and we can
the deals
make
that I
that,
think
we
should
can
be
make,
false.
we can make that same arrangement quick start.
I mean,
That works. But that's totally on me,
But-
so, sorry.
but-
I mean-
well, Christie asked me this morning, I said, no, that doesn't happen.
Board member
And,
counted out.
and the truth of the matter is, we don't allow people to take cars home, so.
And it's not a
In
holding,
my
all
mind,
it is just a.
I wasn't thinking about that correctly, so.
All right, sorry, squirreled there a little.
Somebody showed me, or told me anything that was in that bag.
Mhm.
Should we be checking that before we actually
Well,
take
so-
off with it?
In-
So if there's a
in-
different amount, we can say no?
It was a locking bag, right?
Oh, I don't know.
Well,
Okay,
the problem
what
is,
should-
but there should be, when money comes in, to protect everybody around it, you should have the secretary, treasurer, whatever organization, and a board member. And it should be a random board member that changes. And they should count out and write down what all they've counted in their bag, put it in and then lock it.
That's the procedure we have set in place. So the procedure we have in place for down there was, they would take the money in, they would have multiple people there counting it.
Okay.
Whoever did it would initial the 10-key tape, and then they would put it in the locking bag. If we go down and get a locked bag, then we can open it, so that's the security of the transport. That's what we do with all of our departments that have locking bags like that, is to make sure that if I go get it, I can't get into it, so, what comes back will be verified. We'll work out some arrangements down there for that. Concessions for Parks and Rec, or Event Center, that's just 200,000, that should just flow in and out.
Yep.
And cover itself, so that equals revenue. Appraisal, we did the split for the department.
Did we figure out all of our postage and all of our stuff, or are we still changing
we'll-
our mind every 10 minutes?
No, we'll get there in a sec. The only thing we changed on the salaries is for anybody that is a appraisal, that is not a certified appraisal, the trainees, we budgeted at certified appraisal, just so that we have the money there. Then we did do some adjustments, but I think the department was good. It was just stuff that we had talked about through the department request. We took out the 10,000 for appraisal line 741 because it's included above. Anita was good with that because that's who we were working with on the budget. So that was really the only change. Anita's very aware of anything we changed, so she was happy with that. There was some double booking if you look on the next page. The items that were on this page were also included above, so we took care of that. Landfill, you've got Kyle and Tyson with the splits. We added a potential retirement payout that came about when we did the department meeting. We adjusted the extra help down a little bit, and the overtime, and let Kyle know we were doing it. So, he was okay with that.
What pay grade is Kyle?
19.
Is it a 19?
Yeah. No.
No.
19?
No.
18.
It's got-
18.
Or it's gotta be less than that,
Yeah, he's,
because his,
I think he's in,
he's at 16.
I think that's right.
17. Yeah, 17, sorry. Used to be 19 to 17.
Yeah, we took it down.
That would be one I would recommend to put back to like 18 or something.
Traditionally, your CFOs, your public works director, and your engineer, excluding attorneys are the highest. So,
Okay.
and they used to all be 19. Oh, and your IT.
Brett wasn't, and then we increased him right before, the year before he retired. And then, because our previous engineer always let Brett know that he got more money than Brett did. I don't remember that. very definite.
Mhm.
But we increased Brett, and then we brought Kyle back down. And we could get Kyle up.
You wanna make that now, or you wanna talk about that after we get through, when we talk about grade changes?
Depends when Kyle comes in and talks to us, Seth. How he talks.
Wait till this afternoon
But it's a
then.
discussion area.
Okay.
Yeah.
We could talk about.
We did change computers based on IT's recommendation.
Can I just say that is still so nice as we get through that, just having that IT recommendation.
Yeah.
That's
It was
awesome.
a little rough this year, but I think next year it will be a lot
It's
smoother.
supposed to go down quite a bit next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The IT recommendation.
Just because this year departments did not check with Adams first, and so I was calling them and I was like, what is this?
Right.
And then took it out. So I think next year, they'll make sure to communicate with Adams before they put it in. So we'll go.
Learning curve.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good.
We did take an increase, and this was when we met with Kyle on professional services. He did not realize that his 5-year emissions was coming up this year, so we added $38,000 in line 743. And that was the only increase we took for this department. Obviously, he was okay with it because he gave it to us. Gas system, we did a few adjustments. He was good with, maybe we did less than I thought. Fuel additives, we took down to 20 based on usage. And actually, that's the only thing we adjusted, other than admin fee, but that's based on a percentage.
And what is the admin fee for?
That goes into the general fund to reimburse, because it's a enterprise fund, it goes in to reimburse our office, court, or treasurer's office for tax collections, your guys' office, IT, maintenance, and legal.
That's what I was thinking, but I wasn't sure.
Well, it doesn't do legal anymore, because legal's back in justice fund. Liability insurance, those are numbers from ICRIM. Veterans Memorial, we,
Veterans Memorial, weren't we had money to do a brick on the front of the building we were talking
Yes.
about through
Mhm.
ARPA. Did we set that into ARPA then?
that is
Or-
in, well, we left that one in here, for 69,000
Okay.
under special projects. I wasn't 100%.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay, so if we end up
Okay.
paying for that, then we'll just do a budget reduction if we
Okay.
need to, so that they don't try to spend those monies depending on how.
That's
I'm
fine.
sure we're gonna be having a meeting with them.
Oh, yes, we will.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause
We
things
did-
just got changed up.
I had to deal with it last night.
We did take out $1,200. That was always requested by the department for petty cash. What they don't understand is that gets paid out through above line items, so.
Okay.
Noxious weed, we changed the split for the supervisor to 50-50, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit more when Kyle comes in. The only other thing we changed was $350 for IT. So we left their budget alone, so that we can see what the new supervisor does with both mosquito and noxious. So on the next page is what noxious, and again, the only thing we changed was the 50% split on the supervisor. We left everything else the same other than IT. And the reason it's $350 is this split the computer between the two departments. When Kyle comes in, this may be subject to change, depending on how you feel. Hill, we added the items that I talked about earlier. We added the AC unit and the CPOD shower for the jail, and then we added the ARPA funds for the jail projects. And we had put the roof for historical in here, because it potentially may be ARPA. If not, it's not money there.
You guys got that letter? Options or whatever? Talking about the showers?
Yeah. It was a chuckler.
Snowmobile, the only adjustment was for the $500 for PPE and gloves. Waterways, we put at $25,000 potentially for the Gomez Reservoir. 911, we did make some changes in here. We took out Adam's wage and put that 100% in IT. We need to start working on the dollars in here and stretching them a little bit more. We made the change we took out the console upgrade and put it with, if it's going to happen, put it with the lease option through Motorola. So that's where the $130,000 increase under lease equipment is. Hopefully this is going to be fundable. We've still got
Don't
some.
sound so confident there.
Well, we've got some unknowns with some of the Motorola spilling costs that we thought we could take out at one point. Now we can't. Juvenile detention, we didn't do any changes other than the COLA, and B budget, of course, is accepted by the board. And then we just have the grants, which we're going to take up. We'll make sure and find a line for wherever we're going to put the ARPA funds, and just make sure to earmark that. 17 million there. Do you want to go through trusts?
No, I'm okay with the
Okay.
trust.
The big one on the
that.
trust that you might care about is, we just put the cash forward for the capital acquisitions and projects. It would be nice to have what projects we're going to do, because right now it's just thrown in there as a lump sum.
Okay.
For transparency purposes, you might not want it that way. And then we have the health insurance at 7.2. The rest of them are, you've got workshop trust, which is juvenile probation, that's their operating.
On a note, the juvenile lottery trust will probably be sent out
It will
in
be sent out.
FY '22. And Mac is paying, and this is just a heads up, Mac is paying his grant match out of that lottery trust and has been doing so for a number of years. And is not sure where after FY '22 that grant match will be coming from. So just kind of a heads up, he might be coming to talk to you about that.
The only other one is on the event center. We did add $100,000 for July 4th, and then concerts we put in $250 and 10 for Ladies in the Park.
Okay.
And we'll add a description on that, because right now it just says operating, but we need to put July 4th so that you know what that 100 is. It's a substantial amount.
Okay.
That's the quick. So this afternoon, Kyle will be here at 1:30. We just wanted to get that one out of the way, because we know he was going to want to talk to you about that. And beyond that, it's just going to be changes that you guys want to make. If you want to meet with any other departments, then you can try and schedule this on Thursday.
I just need to clarify something right quick. Earlier when I was talking about engineering, I said Twin Falls County, Twin Falls City that has their engineers. Twin Falls County actually has 4 separate highway districts, and they do not have landfill, so they actually have an engineering firm on staff that they're designated. Real quick, and this is why I bring this back to us, and this is where we need to be very careful, and with Kyle coming back in Idaho Code 541218 under Public Works, it shall be unlawful for the state or for any county, city, school district, irrigation district, drainage district, highway district, or subdivision of the state having power to levy taxes or assessments against property situated therein to engage in the construction of any public works when the public health or safety is involved, unless the plans and specifications and estimates have been prepared by and the construction reviewed by a professional engineer. The provisions of this section shall not apply to public construction, reconstruction, maintenance, and repair work that is governed by Chapter 12, Title 42, which that's actually dealing with ditches. Idaho Code or Public Works that is insignificant, that is a project of less than $10,000 in total cost, performed by employees of the public agency and performed in accordance with the standards for such work that have been clarified by a professional engineer and duly adopted by the public agency's governing body, including but not limiting to the Idaho standards for public works construction and any supplements thereunto, and only if a professional engineer determines that such public construction, reconstruction, maintenance, and repair work does not represent material risk to the public health or safety. Every single project that we do in road and bridge, at the landfill, at the wellness complex, if it's over $10,000, the engineer either has to sign off and say, it does not pose a material risk of health and safety, or it needs to be designed and stamped. And that's what I'm saying and getting back to you. And so there's just food for thought when Kyle comes back in. We need to get in line with that, because that makes me uncomfortable that I know we have projects over $10,000 that we haven't had anybody look at, that just says, and what it says is they can walk in and say, nope, you're painting and put some sheetrock in place and you don't have to do this. It's not a material safety issue. You're going to go in and rip off the roof of the jail. The engineer should go out there and say, yep, we're going to rip the roof off, and we need to have it to standards to make sure we put the right roof on so we don't hurt somebody inside. That's just my comment from where to follow on.
And just as one last point of clarification, on the clerk's recommendation, last page, you have a budget of 81.7. Based on our discussion about adding the ARPA funds, that would be 90.2.
Another 8.5.
Yeah.
So, and on that,
Oh,
you actually need to use the top total.
it should
The
be
82
just
million?
under, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So what that bottom total is, we used to budget for health insurance in 0135. So that is just a comparison of history of health
All right,
insurance.
so we're at
I don't
91
know.
million then with the additional 8.5.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
With that being said, we'll be at recess till 1:30.